I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay.
And Josh, if I could ask you to call the roll.
Yeah.
6:32. Franklin. Gasker. Here. Gilbert. Here. King.
Here.
Powell. Here. I want to welcome Andre to his first meeting here. We're glad to have him join us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good to have you here. If you've had a chance to look at the minutes, the agenda first of all. We've been asked to review our decision about the inspection, timing of inspections on rental units. So that's on our agenda. And I've also asked our Neil Brown to be here. You may have seen that wonderful article in the Chronicle, but I think if we're going to be talking in the future about policies to try to be more inclusive, to incorporate ex-offenders into the community, we can use some advice from time to time. And I'd like to give him a chance to talk to us about the Sardano Foundation and how that works going forward. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion?
Second.
Seconded?
Second.
Pardon?
Who did a second?
Who did a second? I did.
I'll do a second.
Oh, you, Lisa did? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Right, approval of minutes. I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes. Can I combine these two? For October 5th and November 2nd, 2021? Is there a motion?
I'll move we approve both.
Lisa?
Sets of minutes as presented.
As presented, all right. Then that motion's been made and seconded. Any questions, additions, subtractions, corrections? None? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Bill, do you want to take us through this next item?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. And maybe also by way of introduction, Scott is in the back.
Oh, yes, thank you for
And
being
I
here.
should say, if I could,
Yes.
Josh is in transition. He has taken a job as a city manager in Iowa. He starts on January 12th? 11th. I was close.
Yeah, surrounded it.
Yeah, so this will be the last HRC meeting, and Scott will probably, in the interim, well, I don't even know if it's an interim, but we'll be picking up on January with some of the, you probably know Scott from WLBK days, and for the last year he's been working for the city of DeKalb as a management analyst and doing lots of things, so he's very good at listening. So that was his job on the news side. So he will.
Thanks for joining us this evening.
Well, yes.
And I was going to hold off until the end.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
But that's fine.
But I just thought I'd make an introduction.
No,
And welcome to Andre. Good to see you.
Thank you, Bill.
So, yeah, I just thought and thank you for taking this up. I was at the last meeting and the commission had recommended a draft, which I was going to dutifully take forward to council, but then I had some conversations with, I guess, if there is a subsidiary membership for persons on this commission, I think these two gentlemen probably have earned it. So Mike and Will and I have had some conversation, and other members of the DAR board, and they had a thought that I thought you should hear concerning what used to be called the 1 hour rule. And I think I'll just dish to you two.
Yeah, well, and I went back after the last HRC meeting, and I thought Glenn Rowley was going to be here tonight too, but he expressed, especially in the rooming houses, where it's imperative to have the 1 hour notice for, and going back from a historical perspective when it was put in, so that, again, for parties and stuff, that they can help break those up and minimize those and give a 1 hour notice, whether it's a rooming house or property up at around NIU. And if you reread the actual, what was in the chapter, it alludes to the fact too that it's not designed to harass the tenant. So not abuse the right to access the rental unit or use it to harass the tenant, except, of course, in emergency, the 1 hour notice. And again, if you look at from a historical perspective, to conduct necessary inspections of the premises, work with the city during the investigation of a complaint, of violations that are happening, and also when accompanied by the police department, public safety personnel, and to maintain the safe, quiet lifestyle that we all enjoy. So that was kind of, and I think we lost some of that maybe at the last HRC meeting and when I talked to Mike and others, so that's why I suggested. The one concern that I'd heard from your group was there was a landlord that could give a 1 hour notice, post it on the door, and just walk in, you know, and not have somebody present, and that maybe things got stolen or got taken. So my suggestion was, in talking to the other DAR members and then to Bill, was to suggest that tenants or occupants had to be present. You just couldn't post a 1 hour notice and then just walk in. That occupants or the tenant needed to be present to make that happen. So I would like to yield to, I guess, Mike Pitsley too, and see if he had, and Glenn had any other input on, the 1 hour notice and how you guys use it, because you use it more than I've never used it, but I wanted them to share their thoughts too on the 1 hour notice.
Yeah, so I've probably been in the business 35 years, at the most, you know. I don't think I've ever used it. I've threatened to use it, you know, breaking up parties with police standing behind me, where there's something illegal going on in the apartment, that type of thing. But I've never really served that notice, you know. I've only used it, like I said, to get cooperation from the tenant that's living in there. If you don't realize it or not, but the landlord has more power at 2 in the morning with his tenants than the police do. And we can affect more change than, you know, they won't even answer the door sometimes for the police department. I can go there, you hear them in there, chitter-chattering, and give them that, hey, I'm going to be here in an hour, I'm giving you that notice. They'll open the door. So, you know, I would hate to have not that leverage to, you know, protect the other tenants that are living in the property. You know, I don't want it to bleed into the morning. So that's my feeling on it.
Just to echo that, I think I've used it twice in 20 years. And my situation is more rooming house than apartments. So there's already a greater access to the tenant. But yeah, it's really because if there's a situation that's boiling out of control, just being able to kind of, you know, you're really not trying to like get in, you know, you're just trying to say, hey, if there's something that's happening that is not good, we want to just be able to kind of calm that situation down. So it's not, I don't think it's anything that is abused by landlord, at least not that I know from DAR, from our people in DAR, you know, it's not been an issue.
You know, I had a concern about it, and I think I have two concerns now, given your comments. One is, why not make an exception for rooming houses? Because I think that makes more sense. And if you haven't used it, then maybe it's not necessary. Maybe there's some other options, because both of you said you haven't used it. You haven't used it maybe
I
twice.
threatened to use it.
Yeah, I threatened.
Well, and I get that, right? I get that. And so, you know, threatening is kind of bullying to me, and I get it. I think that's important. And I think that young people particularly can go over the top, especially, you know, college students, not to put them, you know, isolate them. But I also think that we are also experiencing a situation currently in this town where there is a landlord that's not really responsive and really responsible. And so my concern is always for tenants who can be taken advantage of. And because it's not something that you utilize regularly, I think for the boarding houses, for the exceptions, I think we can, because I think those are other people, that's a different kind of set of circumstances. I still am,
What would be the difference between a rooming house and an apartment where you got people living above you, beside you, below you, top of you, next to you?
well, my sense is a boarding house is typically college students. And they're
Not
lifestyles.
anymore.
Not in my neighborhood, but,
Not anymore.
Cornell, you want to say something?
So,
Didn't mean to cut
I
you
guess
off.
I'm catching the tail end of this, there might have been some discussion prior to. It's simply too much power. It's simply too much power. Malcolm X movie, he stood with a group of people in front of the police station, and he did simply this. And the response was what? That's
Too much power for one
man
man to
to
have.
have. Simply too much power. The dynamic is off. Because what do I do as the tenant? Now, if there was language in there that spoke of situations in which it can and can't be used, and it was definite, and it was clear, understandable. But a blanket ability to just give somebody a 1 hour notice and walk into their home? No.
Well, there's five, it outlines 5 things in the code, and if you want to further define those, I guess I'd like to hear from how can we refine it to make it work, if that's what it takes?
Go ahead.
Okay, and for me, is this a solution looking for a problem? I mean,
When you look at the dynamic, you have landlords who can raise rents to starve out an entire class of people already.
is that happening?
The rents just went up over $75 at every dollar member property last year.
Yours went down.
I'm a dollar member, I rent at all.
What I'm saying is, I experienced it when I went to move. Remember, we've all discussed my personal situation related to that. And as a response to crime and what people don't want the community to look like, they're grabbing power everywhere they can find it to utilize it to effectuate the change that they want. But nobody's thinking about the person that's affected by that power.
But again, I'm looking for, give me some examples of where it's been used. Educate me. Tell me where
The best
where it's been.
argument for that is what she said. If it's not used, why is it there?
No.
Now-
Why do we want to change something that's on the books if it's not being abused? That's what I'm trying to understand. Like, again, are we
We live
solution
in a
looking for a
different
problem?
time. We're reevaluating what it means to have that much power in the context of what's going on in this city right now. Apparently is what I'm getting from this. And if that's too much power and that 1 hour rule is coming out or going in, how is this,
How did it come up?
is it coming out?
Well, here's my concern.
It's been in the books for a long time.
That's what I'm
It's been
saying.
there, yeah. it's been-
And is somebody looking to take it out?
Well, let me try to put this in context and tell you what my concern would be. You know, once upon a time, when you all were entering, becoming landlords and so forth and so on, the overwhelming majority of tenants in town were probably college students who were, second or third year or moving out of the dormitories. And in the dormitories, they had a housing contract. And the RA could knock on the door at any time and say, you're smoking dope in there, you got beer in there, whatever it is. And so an hour's notice seemed like, well, that's pretty good, and so forth, as compared to living in a residence hall. Now, that's not the situation we're in right now. The major complaints that I hear from people are not about, the landlord coming and only giving me an hour's notice. The major complaints that I hear are people are scared to death about gunshots going off in the middle of the night. Now, if there's a house across the street from me that's a rental property, let's say, and I happen to notice that, there are cars pulling up every 15 minutes, and people walk into the house and they leave the house and so forth and so on, for the landlord to give a 24-hour notice, come on, I mean, I would like, if either of these or any of our landlords had reason to suspect that, this apartment and, what's now 100 properties but is going to be turned over, if we're going to get rid of some of these drug houses, frankly, I'd want to be able to walk in on short notice with a police officer and say,
That's
"You got a little
changing justice.
Pardon?
That's changing the role of the police to the citizen. That's basically now, it's
Well,
a
they're
police don't need much
Flat-
notice, do
house.
they? Do the police need notice to enter?
Not
I didn't think
in
so.
certain
Okay,
circumstances.
okay, that's what I'm not sure. That's what I'm not sure. I am concerned about community safety.
Police have the right to get in there when they need to get in there.
If
Okay.
there's a
Well,
highly
see.
circumstantial question, it depends on what's happening in there, it depends on what's in plain view, it depends if you're gonna seize the place to go to search warrant, it's no easy answer to that question.
Well, but the point is that the police don't just show up, Josh, let's not pretend like they do. So something has to happen for the police to show up. So they got to call, somebody expressed some concern. So the police don't just pop up. So when they come, they're coming for a reason. And so when they arrive, they bring with them the authority of the police. My voice sounds a little,
Yeah.
people are telling me about my tone, so let me be clear about my tone. I'm not, that's not
You're
my,
around family.
I'm
Yes.
not verbally fighting you, but I try to be aware of it. And I had a mask, I certainly want to compensate for that, but I also want to be clear, that police don't just pop up. So when they come, they bring their authority, which means they have access that the rest of us don't have. I mean, the landlord has some access as
But
well.
even, there's still, tenants still have rights. I think that
They do.
we're confusing, in my head, we're confusing what could happen, what can happen with what does happen, and what the landlord just can't show up, knock on your door, and say, I mean, put it this way, if we're fighting, again, solution looking for a problem. We're fighting what some may perceive to be an issue with gaining access if there is a emergency situation or a perceived emergency situation, right? You can say, I think the water is leaking because I have a spot in the ceiling down below. And the landlord could, in theory, gain access to deal with an emergency problem and even maybe circumvent a 1 hour notice. I think a 1 hour notice to a tenant saying, hey, if we perceive that something's going wrong, you have the opportunity in an hour. Let's think about what an hour is. That's about a 5-minute notice. You have an hour to correct whatever may be the cause for that person to enter your property. And then we have to say, is that something that is currently being abused, right? And if it is being abused, there's certainly rights that tenants have to address. If somebody's coming and knocking on your door every day, giving you an hour notice, clearly there's either something really going wrong in your unit, or you can avail yourself of your rights as a person that is paying rent to live there to address those issues. So, like I said, I understand the empathetic view of a 1 hour notice, but, there's so many other ways that you can do this, and you're just going to skin the cat a different way for something that may not be a real problem. Just my 2 cents.
I'm going to ask go ahead. Go ahead, Richard.
So quick set of circumstances, Bill, you sleep. You just worked a long day. Kids laying down, spouse at work, only person there is you. There's an issue where you may or may not be behind on rent. You may or may not have a great relationship with your landlord. His person who has some semblance of control of your life already, I'm that person. I'll be back in an hour. Now, you say there are circumstances in which you can and can't use it. I'll be back in an hour. Whatever's going on, fix it. Who else can walk into somebody else's life like that on any pretense? Because, like you just said, there's ways to circumvent certain things. Give them a 1 hour notice and be actively engaged and involved with power in somebody else's life.
Police.
That's who should have it. The end part was the point.
But if you take the police and you put them in that situation, now you're reducing using city services and costs to the taxpayer to address something that may be easily addressed between the landlord and the tenant.
It probably gives the tenant more power because he's going to tell his knucklehead buddies, hey, I just got an hour notice.
Right.
Get out of here now.
Again, tell me give me an example where it's happened.
We're looking at crime as alternative solutions to the police. This is not a thing where it's a tenant thing. This is about how people are viewing the community and what they want to do about it.
Who?
This is landlords. I'm watching it happen in the community every week, every day. I watch it happen. Rents go up. Background checks get stricter. Places that didn't do background checks do background checks now. This is a concerted effort to gain control, to effectuate what people want to see and what they feel is a power grab over land in certain communities and other things that's going on that's all tied together. This is not an isolated thing where we just want to be able to do this because of this reason. When a pattern shows itself, that pattern shows to be true.
Cause and effect.
Cause, gun crime, violence, and everything going up in certain areas that commonly keep coming up in conversation. Rent goes up.
Solution.
No.
How would you solve it?
No. It's not about how I will solve it. That's not my... We say get the community involved. We don't say give them the power to disrupt other people's lives. That's a different thing.
Like,
Engaging your tenants, hold on. Engaging your tenants, supporting your tenants, working with your tenants, those things help people build their life. Asking for the power to walk in their home whenever you feel like on an hour's notice, it's not the same thing.
We're not asking for power, the power's already there.
So if somebody was trying to take it out and you want to keep it, it should be gone.
Or no, one second, go ahead. Yeah.
So, is this okay?
Yes, we can.
Right. This used to be called the cave rule.
Yes.
So it's been around for a while. I don't know how long it's been in leases, but probably 20-some years. And it's the old, no loud party, no underage drinking, and things that used to be in the main burden of the tenant in the lease. That you can't do this, you can't do that, and they're spelled out. So 1 hour made a difference, and you hit it, and Lisa was talking about this too. An hour, that was a reasonable amount of time to get rid of the cake. Or, in the old days, when marijuana was illegal, get rid of the weed.
Yeah.
Because you could smell it in the hallway, and you didn't need a blinking light to say there's something going on.
Right.
So, landlord, I'll be back. The neighbor upstairs says you're at it again. I'll be back in an hour. And I hope that's all gone. And oftentimes it was because of the power that a landlord does have. It says in the lease, you can't do these things or else. So I gather that the main problem is we've had this large 800-pound gorilla, 100 properties on the scene that in the last 5 years has kind of upset the usual relationships in a very dramatic way. We've had other landlords, but never at this scale of 1,000 units and so forth. And I've heard stories about their agents, without naming names, going in and looking and kind of laying themselves in. So I understand the Commission's concern about that, and Ornell's concern about that. In fact, I even hazard a guess, so if it hadn't been for Hunter, this never would have come up in the last couple of weeks. It was sort of an afterthought anyway. It wasn't part of the early discussions, and it is now because we're hearing stories, right? So what is it, if anything, maybe there's anything that we can identify, and this is what you suggested, what can we identify in that list that makes some sense? Maybe, the keg rule, underage drinking you don't allow in your apartments, I assume. You don't police it.
that.
But here's one thing just as a city official, aside from just being a citizen and trying to find a middle ground here, we don't have the police capacity, and never probably will, and I don't know whether we want it, to be always available to every landlord who wants us to come and solve the problem, the loud noise, the possibility of underage drinking. Don't know for sure, but I bet there's some 18-year-olds in there. We don't have time. We're trying to do a lot of other things. There's other serious crime, more threatening than that, and we're also trying to get everywhere in town. So I like the idea that some landlords would want to enforce their leases, but with discretion.
Well,
So we're talking about discretion here, and how do you enforce that? And it's like, it reminds me frankly of I negotiate a lot of union contracts. When things are going well, you have a 5-page contract. When you have conflict on a regular basis and you have people who aren't seeing eye to eye, you end up with a 40-page contract, and it grows every year. So I don't want this to grow into an encyclopedia, but what what I've identified is that times have changed. We don't have some of those minor things, the Kager and a little bit of weed and bothering the neighbors next door. Shots fired is what bothered you said.
yeah.
But is it the landlord going in that's the problem, or is it other things? If it's Hunter and their practices which is driving us to do this, I wish I could say we solved that. We haven't. We maybe are on the way to helping a little bit in that direction because of some things that have happened here in the last 3 or 4 months. But is there something we can do now? I don't know.
Well, here's the thing, if I may, and then Lord, and maybe I'm naive about this, Vernell, but if I'm 21 years old or whatever, and I'm having a party and all these people are coming over and so forth and so on, and and there's a lot of noise and so forth and so on, frankly, I'd rather see Glenn at 2 o'clock in the morning, or Mike, or Will, because, they're going to say, hey, come on, knock it off, and so forth and so on. When Officer so-and-so and Officer so-and-so come in, then, are they obliged to say, I want to see some IDs? We're going to write tickets. They're going to tell everybody to go home, but I don't think anybody's going to go to jail or anybody's going to get fined, or, none of these guys show up. And so if we want this to be handled in as and de-escalated way as possible, I would probably prefer if somebody came, if my landlord came to a police sergeant.
The only time I've been there is when they're disturbing the rights of other people. So I, knocked on the door, hey, cut your music down, you're getting neighbors complaining, about your behavior. Bill's sleeping, you just woke him up. You know what I mean? It's 2 in the morning.
How does that happen? I mean, obviously you're not driving around 2 in the morning, people call you up and say.
But actually, he is.
Yeah.
He is.
So I just have one quick question.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear on what I'm hearing. Because what I believe I'm hearing is that we're taking police power and in some form or fashion activating that in the hands of a landlord to do what our police can't do.
Well, actually, sure.
To do what our police can't do. And we scream bloody murder, and I know it's a different context, but same slippery slope. We scream bloody murder and try to little boy Rittenhouse, but we institute policies and practices that maybe not at the same degree do the same thing. My question is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Well, this doesn't compromise your argument at all. But in point of fact, the landlords, what we're doing now is we're trying to review this whole landlord-tenant, regulations that have been in effect for God knows how long. And so currently, the landlords do have that authority. We're not trying to give that authority. At our last meeting, we decided they didn't.
We're trying to activate it and let them know that they have that authority and say it's okay as long as we define it.
No, they've already had it.
It's been 24 hours instead of 1 hour.
We want to change
That's
it.
what was missing.
We want to change it to 24. It was.
You know what, and 24 hours is a crazy number. A crazy number. Hey, you gotta give me 24 hours. You gave the notice at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, you can't come till 2. No, I'm giving you a day before notice. That's how we do it in our office. Day before, not hours. We're giving you enough time.
But you were
Let's say if you're trying to.
talking about somebody having a party or something. That's not a day before. That's
No.
like, hey.
Exactly.
Right, but that's
an
not
alert.
even, you don't even need an hour before for that. That's just a complaint.
So like if there's a party.
So if it doesn't say an hour, then it's not that kind of an issue. You can always, as the landlord, go, hey, What's going on? Your neighbors are complaining about you.
It's in the-
Right, yeah,
Right,
exactly.
so you don't need an hour for that.
No, right.
Right, so
Right.
my question,
Hey,
and I
come
think,
to the door so I can talk to you. They
Right.
won't open the door.
That's not the same thing as an
They
inspection.
won't, no, we're not.
It's not.
we haven't
That's
done
not the
it.
same thing as an
We don't.
inspection. That's just not gonna, Mike, you want to?
Well, I was
Well, I'm
just going to
sorry.
suggest that what we're trying to do is improve and clean up the existing
Yeah.
chapter. And so the first item was, your concern was a landlord could walk in if the tenant wasn't present. So I suggested we add the language that the tenant or occupant had to be present.
Had to be present, yeah.
The second thing I would
That's-
just in discussion, that would maybe the landlord needs to identify what term of their lease is in violation.
Mhm.
Well,
Because it's about a landlord trying to enforce their lease as written. So maybe there's two conditions that could be added to this to improve the 1 hour notice. One, that you've got to be present, and two, that you have to identify the violation of the lease that the tenant is in compliance.
Well,
with.
We're not inspecting our apartment anymore. We're just asking you to come to the front door usually.
yeah.
You know, they're in there chit-chatting, you know, and motherfucking the police. And, you know what I mean, yelling, you know, it's,
Well,
if you haven't been there, it's kind of disturbing.
well,
well,
I've been a young person
then-
where the environment has been certainly less than amenable for anybody.
Right.
For the landlord, for the neighbor, for your parents, and I think there are a lot of ways to respond to that. And I think when we offer, or continue to offer the 1 hour notice, I think particularly in this environment at this time, that raises some flags for me. Particularly when we have in our midst, a landlord that is not, the best, right? He's not a great landlord, doesn't have a shining experience. And what else is interesting is, we had a conversation, and now we have brought out 3 landlords again. And 2 say we don't even use it. But it seems to be such a hot topic that you're here trying to tell us to do it. And I'm willing to say, let's say maybe for rooming houses, but you say rooming houses are not just college students anymore. So,
before you do, Jordan's been very patient.
Most of this discussion has nothing to do with the language that we propose. First of all emergencies are accepted from it. And second of all, it's talking about a landlord entering the premises.
Yes.
And then it lists 6 things, not 5, 6 things. And none of them are for a loud party or anything like that. It does have to ensure the safety of occupants of such rental union when accompanied by city police or public safety personnel, but that's not really what we're talking about. And the second one is with the city during the investigation of complaint. All of the things that are covered by this are things that we felt 24 hours was perfectly reasonable. If this was the keg 1 hour keg rule, this really didn't address that.
Well, I agree with that. We're talking about, in this section, if you got it, it's 1014, section E. The landlord should not abuse the right of access to the rental unit or use it to harass the tenant. Except in cases of emergency, the landlord should give the tenant at least 1 hour notice of his or her intent to enter. And if all practical, may enter the unit only between 8 o'clock a.m. and 8 o'clock p.m. And then it lists these things that have to do with inspections, repairs, alterations, and so forth and so on. Now, what we may be talking about instead, if we're talking in the crime-free housing ordinance, it says, under section 10 or wherever that is, additionally, the landlord has important rights as owner of the property. The landlord reserves the right to enter the premises in accordance with the terms of this lease and applicable law, to enforce the terms of this lease, and to implement an action for forcible entry or eviction. Well, I think that doesn't give a time limit. That doesn't say
So-
an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, or anything like that. But I think
So there's
if
certain,
we're talking about breaking up a party, or we're talking about, show, you got an hour because I'm gonna change this, I'm gonna replace the garbage disposal, or something like that. That's a.
these are typical situations where we give notice before we go into an apartment.
Right,
We're changing all your furnace filters tomorrow, we'll be there tomorrow.
right.
We don't give them 24-hour notice, we give them a day before notice. The property is being sold, the realtor's gonna be there tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Man, let's say we gave them that notice at 5 p.m. We're giving them a day before notice, to try, maybe you gotta clean the place up, whatever you do. So I don't like the 24-hour notice, because that's gonna affect every rental property in town. Let's say you wanna sell your home and it's rented. You can't show this, you need 24 full hours before you give me that notice.
Well, then we can change it to 12 hours, it's usually the next.
Glenn?
And I'm gonna respectfully disagree with Mike on that point. But getting to the other point, it sounds like we've got an issue with a landlord or landlords that are entering units when people aren't there, right? I think it would be reasonable to assume that the argument is people are there and something is happening.
That's usually the case.
So I think that, and to Ernell's point, right, where he said, hey, I just got a hurt, you're there. I think the issue, that's what I was saying, for me, it's always understanding why this is being discussed. Okay, so when you're making a change, I get change, but I want to understand what's the motivation behind the change, not something I think might be happening, but what is happening to drive the discussion. And so if I'm understanding it correctly, Hunter Properties was entering in units when people weren't there and things were being removed from their property. Right? And there was no witness to the fact that somebody was inside their unit.
Well, let me clarify, if I may. It wasn't just Hunter, because there were other properties in this town
Right.
where folks have gone in and taken stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so that's another example.
Okay.
Without saying people aren't perfect and we don't want to suspect all landlords as being on the bad end or the
Exactly.
sour end. But the truth of the matter is that with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility.
Absolutely.
And not everybody responds the same way.
So here's what I'm agreeing with you. And so my inference and assumption was that we were doing something, people were entering units where people were there and saying, hey, there's a lot of party, there's activity, whatever. I know you're in there. I want to have a conversation with you. I will be back in an hour because you're there and something may or may not be happening in your unit, as opposed to people just going into their unit. Right?
Lisa, before,
And I think we can maybe address it.
I had a actual proposal.
okay.
So that was,
Without changing much. So, if I remember right, we didn't propose any changes to that 1 through 6, right? I mean, if everybody can.
The time limit was the only.
Yeah, time limit was the only thing. So, and it started with 1 hour, and we went to 24, and then maybe 12, and whatever, 10. Let's just take the time out, and this is how it might read. The landlord shall not abuse the right of access to the rental unit or use it to harass the tenant. Period. Same sentence. Except in cases of emergency, the same. The landlord, now go to the last line, may enter a rental unit, this is what it said before, only for the following purposes. Boom, 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 boom. And you could even add a 7, which would be the transition into the emergency, or for emergency reasons as defined in 2 below. And now I sound like a lawyer. I'm sorry. So, but we took out the time. Well, it says you can't do it. It just says you cannot do that, and you can't trespass except you can go in for only these things, like you're accompanied by a police officer, you're showing the rental unit to prospective purchasers, you're making necessary or agreed repairs. You could just take out agreed repairs.
So as a tenant, do I get notice? I'm good on there. Do I get notice that you're coming?
And what kind of notice? Because that means now that we just got rid of any notice.
Well, which gets us basically to, let's just define these reasons more precisely. These are the things that you would, and
But I
the
still want to
occasions.
know you going for those reasons.
And I agree
The
with
first
that.
one's kind of a throwaway, because I don't know what necessary inspection of the premises is. Maybe that is a reference to
I agree with
I
that.
have FHA approved.
I agree with you on this.
That still don't
Inspections.
solve the fact that you gotta tell me you're going in.
I'm sorry.
And I need to know when, and I need to have enough time to make sure my,
Stuff it.
pardon me, shit is in order.
Hey, I rented, and I had a landlord,
I'm not arguing that.
and I will
Why don't we
agree.
just refine the language, though, to say, these are the reasons, and the only reasons, short of an emergency, the landlord may enter.
But that 24 hours should stay. Now, the 8 o'clock, 8 a.m., all that couldn't go.
Well, it used to say 1, and then we went to 20, that was a big leap. Maybe something else. And you can say, battle around, but I'd like to bring something to the board that they're likely to support.
Yeah.
I don't want to come back to you and say, well, the council voted it down.
Yeah.
Okay, let me add something because I want to kind of, and it's probably, maybe it's done with the works, but I also want to say, I believe that everyone, in this case, where he's talking about showing units or non-emergency access, I don't like the day before. I like 24 hours notice. And I will tell you why. Having rented, right, I get home at 5 o'clock from work. I'm not interested in spending the rest of my evening getting my underwear from hanging on the wall, and I want to go to bed.
I don't want to know what you do with your underwear.
But I'm just saying, as an example, right? Like, I need time to get up. I mean, if you want to show my unit and sell it, then you got, that's on you as a landlord to better manage your time and the time of the person that wants to look at my unit. That's just my opinion. So I'm sure I'm gonna probably piss off my dour board, but that's okay. But I agree with that from just a general access, non-emergency.
24.
I'm 100% behind 24, and again, I may piss some people off, my personal opinion, I will not speak on Dar. My personal opinion.
I'm a renter too.
you
And there
just-
are times when I come home, and sometimes there is a notice saying tomorrow between 8 and so-and-so we'll be here. And if I had a rough day, that means whatever, I gotta do whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't mind that. But if I'm having a party, you're not gonna send
Yeah, so
me a
then you're gonna have
notice.
to call up and say, hey, I'm sorry, but this is a circumstance, can you please do that? It's just that, let's say we're inspecting the whole building, or we get a notice from the FHA doing their HUD inspection. Hey, we'll be there tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Really? You know what I mean? So we're hustling out giving notices to all our tenants, and they're not. The HUD inspections are randomly, they'll randomly pick the apartments they want to look at. They don't say, I'm going to look at these 12. No, you have to have every unit ready, and they're going to walk down the line and say, I want to see that one, I want to see that one, I want to, you know?
That can go an hour notice.
I think as a landlord, and I don't know, I'm not a landlord, like I said, I'm a renter. I think that you can say to a tenant upon moving in, hey, we'll give you 24-hour notice unless something comes up, right? Unless there's an emergency, unless we get a notice from the city that says we have to examine. I think that's fair. And I think that's fair from my
You know what,
perspective.
that's good business practice, and that's exactly what we do. We try to be as fair as we can to our tenants and say, hey, you know what, we're going to be showing your property, and we always give them, show your property. We give you more than 24 hours notice, because we want it to look nice.
Right.
We don't want to walk
So
in
why are we having this conversation?
Because,
some people live by the letter of the law.
Yes.
Which is 24, no, you can't come until 5 o'clock. You can't come at 4, because 5 o'clock is when 24 hours.
yes, and I think that, but what we need to, I think honestly, I think we're getting to a
We're
reasonableness.
close.
Right, and I think that everyone's kind of opinions are being heard, and I think we're kind of landing on what's reasonable. So in a reasonable situation, my humble opinion, if there is a violation of the lease, right, like the noise complaints, things that are, that are going to impact the health and welfare of all people living there, the 1 hour notice kind of has some way there, right? But beyond that, emergencies notwithstanding, 24 hours, right? Like, not the next day. If the HUD comes in, that's an extenuating circumstance. I think that we can find a reasonable point. I think the whole thing with the hour was maybe an overcorrection to a problem, right? And I get it, right? Because here I'm saying, I agree with the 24 hours, you wanna sell my unit, and I'm in, and I don't wanna spend as long as you looking at my, you know, how what kind of TVs I have, and maybe I wanna put that stuff away.
Well, two things.
So, you know,
Two things here, as I understand it, if you're not gonna inspect the property, I mean, if there's a loud party going on, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, you don't wanna go in anyway. You wanna knock on the door and say, hey, knock it off, you know, your neighbors are complaining and so forth and so on. You're not gonna take IDs, you're not so there isn't anything in the language that would prevent a responsible landlord from doing that. I mean,
Except the ordinance said none of this deals with that.
No, I'm just saying that if regardless of what we change or keep the same, there isn't anything here that says that you can't do that. Now, I do like the change that Bill suggested in that moving this last sentence of number 1, 10E, you know, whatever. The landlord may enter a rental unit only for the following purposes, and then it stipulates when this can be used at all. And then we can argue about, except in cases of emergency, the landlord should give the tenant at least 12 hours.
Can I
6
modify,
hours.
in the interest of
Yeah.
what I've heard since I offered that suggestion? Because I think we're getting.
Oh, yeah.
So what I heard from both of you actually is that, you know, you try to give reasonable notice. And there was a time frame in here, it said, preferably between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So if you got the HUD notice at 4 o'clock on a Thursday and they're coming Friday morning at 8 o'clock, what if we just said, basically the notice has to be given by 5 o'clock, by the end of the regular business day, the day before, and the inspection can be had between 8 and 5 the following day.
That's what we do as a business practice.
See that basically, that way, it's not 24 hours notice, but you're given the evening, the night, into the morning, you rise at, you know, unless you're working night shift or something, but even then you have some time. What if we did something like that, and just wordsmith that?
I think we can do that. Is that acceptable to anybody?
I gotta make a quick call.
Well, it's only objective to me because I believe in 24 hours when we can. I understand what you're saying
You know,
about how people are.
Especially when say you have your house for sale.
But this is all my major concern. My major concern is you get a horrible landlord
Yes, me too.
who doesn't, right? Who just goes, hey, you know, it's 8 o'clock, I'll be there at 8 p.m. If you don't clarify some span of time. And I think what Glenn said, you know, I work. And like right now, I worked all day. I went to work, came home, had a meeting, you know, on the computer, virtual, and now I come here. So if I go home tonight and there's a notice telling me tomorrow, anybody but, I won't say the Lord, but I don't want to go there. You know, her or somebody is coming tomorrow. And my place right now happens to look actually pretty decent. I would say, okay, it's not fun. But there have been days when it hasn't been. But because it's something that's extenuating, I get that anyway. I get that my landlord didn't have a choice. But if my landlord has a choice, why would my landlord not give me time?
Right, so I like the fact that you're saying that, because a good landlord wants to separate themselves from a bad landlord.
Right,
So I'm gonna do all the good things that I can do
Right.
that's better than the bad landlord.
right,
So maybe then I'll get more renters
right.
than they will.
Well, and that's why for however long it was in DeKalb going on for an hour, right? But DeKalb also has some other history that's been going on that, you know, we don't know about changing. And again, you know, let's be honest. Say that again?
I like that.
Oh, so it's, things have not always been wonderful and loving.
Right.
And I'm a person who understands that the legal aspect is not always the moral or the spiritual aspect. And my life demonstrates that. Most people who look like me, their lives demonstrate that. So I'm always concerned about that piece of it. So I'm concerned that a tenant wouldn't have reasonable time to prepare
Right,
for the arrival, unless it's an exception.
right.
Now, I don't know how you say that, I don't know how many hours that is, but I think we need to be as clear about access. And that way, if it's a bad landlord, I'm looking at you, but I don't mean you.
She was staring right
She knows. That's a bloodhound in the match.
If it's a landlord without the best intentions
Yes.
for their staff, certainly don't have the best intentions for their tenants, then that can be moderated as well. But I think if you let it go without anything, then that leaves room. And I'm not comfortable with leaving room.
Yeah, before when I was in that situation, I put that in the lease. It was a private homeowner, and I specifically put in 24 hours for that reason, because I was in a situation where they were abusive.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because my landlord, they say they get off at 5, but if something happens and they have to come, and they have put that notice on that door,
Yep.
like at 5, right? So that meant they had to stay a little later to put that notice up,
Yep.
so that I know that tomorrow by 5, somebody may be in this place.
And actually, we try to do multiple ways of giving you a notice. We'll try to email you, text you, and put a note on your door, just so it's.
And that's you, Pitzley. You're not like most, you're not like some.
Because I want people to be happy with where
I
they
get
live.
Right.
Where do you
I get
think
it.
we are?
I'm happy.
Well, well, we can continue, but I think we can table this for now. I think I would like to see language brought back to us next time, if that's possible.
I'll do it, and I welcome suggestions.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you. I think we are very close.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
And I want to thank the landlords that have come, because I think, I mean, and, well, Ernell's here to speak later on, he doesn't get to leave, but. You can stay too, no, but,
When's your party, Ernell?
Not sure yet.
I think,
Yeah, we're gonna put it down.
Oh, yeah.
I'm giving you an hour notice right now. Or no, you're getting an hour notice right now.
I think there ought to be, before we go on to something else, I would like to see, I mean, we've got this, and I'm not looking to take on a whole new big project, but we've got the landlord tenants handbook, we've got the crime free, we've got the, and so forth and so on. I would like to see some kind of, short thing that at least points out best practices, because I think that's what you're describing that you do. And I think, as an example for others, that wouldn't be a bad thing to have.
I hate to table this. We've been
Okay,
doing
well-
this for so long. I think we could come up with language.
Okay.
I threw out 12 hours because that actually does the same thing.
Okay.
And there's only 2 words that have to change, but if you want to do it by 5 o'clock to the next day, I think we can come up with
And
language.
then you could do reasonable inspection times too, that would help. Not at 2 in the morning.
Well, the 8
or
to
what,
8 is, I think we should.
Unless it's an emergency.
Is there something in place for after hours? If there is something going on at 2 a.m.? Is there some type of, no?
No, the police, that's not.
Not right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's not, as I said, there isn't anything that says for or against, that a landlord can't come late at night and say, you guys are making too much noise, you're keeping the baby across the street away.
Yeah, that's another issue.
There isn't anything that says that you can't do that.
He can do that because it's in their lease.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
in the
yeah.
crime-free lease addendum.
Yes,
It's in the quiet
that's
lifestyle.
why I read it,
portion.
that's right.
So they already have the authority to do what the 1 hour notice would give them.
12 hours?
We're good.
We're looking at 12 hours.
So what are you proposing?
12 hours.
Just change 24 to 12 hours.
Yes.
That's it?
The only other question I have, do you want to let it go 8 to 8 in the evening, or you want to just say 8 to 5, or was that to catch people that might,
I'd say 8 to 8 in the evening, if you're going to say 12 hours.
that's the way it was, so.
I think that's fine.
So change it to 12,
Yeah,
all right. Because I agree with Northern, we've
that's, if we
come a
can
long
get down
way
with
on
this,
this,
that's
it's
great.
ready to go. And if you want, I can bring this to the January 10th.
That would be great.
Everything else
Nor
would
do
be
you want to make
set.
that motion?
That gives it, if you're trying to sell your place, that's reasonable time.
Are you okay with that?
I'm not, but that's okay.
Okay.
I got 24, but that's just me.
But anybody can
You
change
got
their
extra
own thing.
stuff going on at your house.
Well, you know, you hang out there, so you know.
It's still doing 24. I mean, that, you know, yeah.
And you know what? I've said my piece.
No, no, no.
You gotta do what you do.
Okay.
If it's 2 hours, 2 hours, I'm not here to argue the details.
Yeah, okay.
I spoke my piece, you
I
do
want to
that.
add something to what Ornell
So what if they call you
said.
at midnight and say, I want 24-hour notice, and then they're gonna come the next midnight?
No, it'd be a full business day.
No, you don't, 24 hours, that's.
Well, they're not gonna come at midnight.
Huh?
They can come at midnight.
Well, in 24 hours doesn't mean you got to show up on that hour.
One
to
of
be
the
clear.
commission's duties is to try to resolve community complaints, so here we are.
What I was going to say
I
is.
say 12-hour notice, and you have to deliver it within those timeframes. Unless it's emergency, of course, then
Yeah.
something else kicks in.
Well, I think that's the way to interpret it. What I was going to say is I think Ornell raised a really great point about the environment. I do think that, you know, as well as I know, I can't assume other people know, you know, redlining was a real thing.
Mhm.
With
Oh,
redlining.
yeah.
Yes, it
Okay,
was.
so
Is.
pricing folks out is also really a strategy, right? Because you get to determine who you want in your environment and how much they're going to pay and how much they're making. So all of that, I think we need to constantly keep that in mind. And not just for families, right, but for students.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, you know, students only get so much money, and maybe that's the new trend, that NIU only wants those students from the top, so those students can afford it. But I just think we need to keep that in mind, because I think those are real concerns. And I think also, young people aren't responsible for who their parents are. And I'm not gonna keep looking at you. It's just that my chair is facing
I'm an
this way.
easy target.
Let me look this way. Young people aren't responsible for who their parents are. And as young people try to establish themselves and develop, I think they need certainly some monitoring and some parameters. And I think that's where good landlords come in. I also think that's where a good environment comes in, and we don't price them out. And at the same time, I understand business, right? We don't want to be so low that we can't compete and other people aren't coming. I think we need to find a way to have a nice blend of all that is, without damning people for who their parents are.
Yep.
Meaning that because you don't have a whole bunch,
Right.
you have to live, you know, under the viaduct.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to add.
And I think
We
that,
are scared of that area, for real.
right, and we know that, you know, part of the challenge with that area is, you know, the rents were so low, right, that I don't know if this is the place to say it, I'm gonna say it anyway. The rents were so low that you weren't even attracting college kids to live there, right? And again, we have to be cautious of the rents being so high that you price people out of the market. And these are sensitivities that I think the collective community has to be very dialed into. That's what makes sense, and make sure that they're, you know, whatever you classify affordable as, but there's certain market rents certainly are, you know, I mean, if students are paying, you know, $800 a month, and that is what the going rate is for a 2-bedroom, then the market's gonna dictate that. But certainly being sensitive to folks that can't afford that, but then you also have other programs that allow for a different amount of rents to be charged in the community, and those are federal programs. So I think we, you know, while we may want to, in our hearts, over-engineer it, you know, the realities are the market's always gonna dictate the market, because the market's always gonna dictate who buys a building and what they do with it. So as much as we may want it to be something different, you know, at the end of the day, we can't dictate what a person owns a property does, as much as we like.
Thank you, Glenn. Norton, do you want to make a motion that we make?
I move that we amend
Yeah.
section 10.14E1, or in section 10.14E1, we change the language from 24 hours notice to 12-hour notice.
All right, okay, thank you.
Second.
Second? Any further discussion? Gosh, I hope not. No.
And, I think we should put in what Bill said, that the notice should be delivered by 5 o'clock or by 8 o'clock or something. I don't know. You can't give a notice at 12 midnight.
It's still, then we would just leave that the same. I think that's
Okay.
what it's.
Yeah.
All right.
You
Okay.
can still say 8 to 8.
All those in
Okay,
favor?
yep.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Gentlemen,
Ayes
since
have
you
it.
are all gentlemen, thank you very, very, very much. Thank you for being the responsible landlords that you are, and thank you for not living in Arizona.
Yeah.
Which, or elsewhere, which is, quite honestly, a lot of the problems that we have. Nobody's gonna come here at 2 o'clock in the morning to shut down a party, if they live, on the other side of the country.
What?
What?
He's
Absentee landlord.
absentee landlord.
Absentee landlord.
Absentee
Oh.
That's all we're going to block.
That's the problem, that's the problem.
That's all right.
You're welcome to stay, if you'd like. I asked Arnell to come to speak to us about the work of the Sir Donald Foundation, because I think that's a very important project, and we ought to be aware of it when we talk about discriminatory practices and ways of expanding the circle of concern in this community, create a greater sense of belonging. Robert Frost once said, that home is a place where when you have to go there, they have to let you in. We have ex-offenders that are coming out of, serving time, and the sisters are here, the mothers are here, the brothers are here. We have to find a way to see how we can be helpful to those folks so they don't wind up where they came from. So, Bernell, if you wouldn't mind. Okay.
Normally I don't, but I want to follow a straight line of information right here and not go all off the rails.
Before
Thank you very much.
I want to say that my exit is in no way, shape, or form a reflection of what I'm going to be presenting.
Make sure I get a crisp.
I like to argue with her all the time. It's sport for me, but I do support this young man.
I want to go to the party and be part of the problem.
Well, at least you get an invite. I never get an invite, so, Oh, did I say that out loud?
When's the last time you invited?
Did I say that out loud? Did I say that out loud now?
Yeah.
I love you, brother.
Be safe. Love you too.
All right, man.
Thank you
for your time, everyone.
I don't know about you, Mike. We still got some discussions to have. No, I'm just
We're working on that,
You could wing it.
last time I went, it took me an hour and a half.
It won't.
Yeah, don't wing it.
The lights go out.
So I really want to start by saying it's very important that we understand the context of belonging when we think about this whole conversation related to returning citizens. And I point that out, and I'm not highlighting you, but we have a change the language campaign. So we change the way we speak about
Oh, please do.
individuals, so that we change the way we think about them, so that as we do things like write policy, we don't write them out unwittingly with
Yes.
unconscious bias and other things that aren't. But I recently did a thing about belonging with criminal justice that spoke on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. For me, my understanding of belonging goes way deeper and beyond diversity, equity, and inclusion. It goes to an initiative that we're going to be having called Our Hope, Our Hearts, Our Hope, Our Home, where we actively get engaged in the community, be involved through employment, through our families, being where we live, through volunteer work and things like that, to show people that I'm an ordinary person, I live right next door. Why are you afraid of me? Now, I want to say this. There's a difference between a returning citizen and a criminal. There's a difference, and I had a long talk with Chief Bird about that. There's a difference between the people that walk through our doors that want to change and those that walk through our doors that we know are going to manipulate us for the next 5 years and get whatever they can get out of us and claim that they're changing. There's certain things you go through that give, like, with Josh, being a police officer. Gave him certain insights that all of us don't have. That same insight, maybe from a place where it wouldn't be traditionally considered expert knowledge or valuable experience, is what I carry into the things that I do. And it breaks down to one simple thing: allowing people to be human. And what that means is, in allowing them to be human, support them in their goal. Don't create a program for them that you say is going to help them. Find out what their goals are, those intrinsic values, those intrinsic motivations, and support those. Push them towards that, because now there's a reason for them to do it. It's not something somebody else wants them to do, parole, probation, some other custodial sentence. It's something that they see as a way to enhance their life. I know many returning citizens that have come home and never looked back. And that's what Sedano Foundation is founded on. It's founded on, based on your decisions from this day forward. You don't ever have to see the inside of a jail or prison again. Because you don't. I haven't. There is an exception. That don't mean your past don't catch up with you. I had a warrant from 2003. I was living in Sycamore at St. Albans Greens before it burned down. And a situation arose and I had to try to stop somebody from driving a car while intoxicated. Police came. I'm just, living my life, proud, doing the work that I do now. And they asked me for my information. No problem, no reason why not to give it to them. And I gave it to him. And he came back after he did his investigation for the whole other situation and cuffed me up and said, "We got to take you to jail." I've never cried on my way to jail before, until then. I never cried on my way to jail before, not even my first time. That right there is what is the undergirding of what Sedano Foundation stands for. And it's not because I cried, it's because of the reasoning why I cried. I knew that I had put some things between me and my criminal behaviors. I knew that I had put some things between me and my past. But I still had that one I had to deal with. So it wasn't based on anything I had done from the day I made my decisions, our 6 basic decisions, which I wanted to share, but can't get this up. It wasn't based on anything I had done since the day I made that very first decision that prison and jail is not where I want to spend my future. It was based on something I had done in my past that I had to clean up and deal with so I can continue to move forward. And here I am today. Because I went to that jail, called my mother-in-law, can you call my mom and everybody else? I only got $1,000, and they came up with the money. Old days I would have had the whole thing, because wasn't nobody coming to bail me out because they knew what I was doing. And I knew what I was doing, so I kept bail money. I don't keep bail money no more. I don't need bail money. I spend my bail money on my bills. And this is where just being human with I have a guy that comes over and he just asked me to teach him how to read. He's 46. I'm 35. Yeah, 6 now? Wow, So, I'm 35 now. I'll be 36 this coming year. But he asked me to teach him how to read. And he sits there and we read Mickey Mouse books. And he enjoys it. And we get them a tutor from Kishwaukee Community College. Although they don't have ADE, we have a GED program. And we're bringing their tutor in for him to be able to learn ADE while they do the GED. These are the things that you have to do. These are the things that we do. It's not always this magnificent program. It's sometimes just having somewhere you can go where you feel welcome. If Sedano Foundation is the only place in DeKalb where individuals with criminal histories feel welcome, cool. We have somewhere to start. Because if you look at it's not even an oddity. This is the Barb City. So it wasn't a surprise to me that reentry wasn't a thought. It was built on keeping people in prison. So I don't hold that too hard against anything, because what you don't know you can't change. But once you do know, I start to pay attention to you. Because now you do know that there are good people that come out of prison. I've demonstrated that. Other people in this community have demonstrated that. Homeowners, business owners, nonprofit leaders, community members, we've demonstrated that. We are directly impacted. That's what we call ourselves. And yes, it may have been because of our own decisions, but when we didn't know better, same thing. When the community didn't know better. So, long story short, Surround Foundation exists to create, support, and provide opportunities for people, well, for individuals with criminal histories, their families, and the communities in which they live. So that means we affect change in the individual, that affects change in the family, and we also work with the family to affect change in that family unit. Mostly right now we're outsourcing that to other organizations and agencies, and then in the community. I think we've demonstrated that well. So our foundation, our 6 decisions, and I'll get you guys a copy of that so you can look at those and come to see how those can bring balance in the foundation to somebody's life. And I've had those reviewed several times. Everybody that comes into our program, I ask them how they feel about them. And many of them have already made at least 1 or 2, or know that they need to make that first one. And the entry fee to come into Surround Foundation is just the desire to not want to go to jail or prison. We can work with that. If we don't have it, we can build it. If we have it, we're going to try to make it do the best that it can. Are we struggling right now? Yes. Are we moving forward? Yes. Have we made headway? Yes. Do we need help? Yes. Any and every volunteer you can think of. Any and every type of support you can think of. It's just the raw, honest truth. Because the foundation is laid, but it's going to take some hands to get it done. The key to this, at this point right now, is our clinical service that serve the individuals coming on parole. We have 70 individuals, and I'm pushing this out to our 3rd year, that went to Chicago. Because in some way, somehow, we've told them that they're not welcome here. We may not have directly said, you aren't welcome here, but our practices have. The way we treat them has. The lack of anything that exists when we know we incarcerate on an average of 394 open cases at our court. About 16 new ones every month, but 12 closed. So that means you have an average of 4 to 6 new cases added to the 394 that goes down by whatever, but it's a constant climb. And I talked to Mary from the Law and Justice Committee recently, from the county board. And she said nobody seemed to notice that but her. Nobody cared to notice. I talked to Parole District 2, and which is not only the agent, but the parole reentry group. There are no resources that they can effectively access in DeKalb County for individuals that come home after incarceration. Ben Gordon had been treated so bad that I had a guy tell me, I'll wait however long it takes for you to get clinicals up because I'm not going back there. We have 70 individuals in Chicago, a place where they're going to learn to be a better criminal, connect with other people, but they're from here, so they're always going to want to visit home. So my question to myself, when I learned all this, was, what can you possibly do, little old you? Well, plant the seed. You know what you've done other places. You know what you want to do. You know who you are. Do you have what it takes to allow individuals to continue to latch on and learn these things and follow you through this as you follow others through? Because my mentors have mentors. And yes, I have a mentor. And they'll have one too, and everybody behind me will have a mentor. But there are other things that have to happen. MRT is one of the things that we're putting clinicals together for, which is MRT for anger management, substance abuse, partner abuse intervention, and mental health assessments. I think this is one of the hardest things we face right now is getting our clinicals up. Because our mentoring runs so smooth, sometimes people just come and sit just because they need to get away. There's an open door policy. This is just as much your place as it is my workplace. If you have to go next door, sit down, watch some TV, do that. That right there is partner abuse intervention on its own. And I need some water because my mouth can be dry.
You've come a long way, bro.
He barely let me in the door. No, there's really that human connection where you can level with somebody. I don't think I've met anybody, well, let me stop lying. I'm not gonna sit here and lie for y'all. I met one person in this community that I was not effectively able to level with. And I don't speak to that person no more.
There's 4 out of you.
Thank you. Probably is but it's now belonging. All of that is in context of belonging. It's real simple. Allow people to be people, meet them where they are, and help them where you can. It's not, before they even get here, determine that they're not allowed here. And I'm not picking on you, Will. By writing secret agreements that they can't be here. This place is viciously known for secret agreements now. I've heard of at least 5 that affected the lives of African Americans over the time that I've been here. They may or may not still exist. That's not my concern. My concern is, where do individuals with criminal histories fit in this community? And we're trying to carve out that place, define that. And we're building a collaborative with the state's attorney's office, public defender's office, courts, probation, parole, and other agencies. We have a meeting on the 13th. Most of y'all probably got the notice already.
Get him involved. That was my recommendations. You know, you should get in on his events. They're outstanding.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Next Monday.
Yeah.
Mhm. And the purpose of that is to build a collaborative of resources, because one organization cannot do it alone. When I came here and I started moving, there was a lot of ruckus and uproar. And then a few agencies effectively did some things that I believe they thought they understood the need, but were not effective in launching these sideline programs that they thought would grow into something else.
Mhm.
Leave that there. Allowing people to exist in this community is what we're here to do at this point. Give them the services, support, and opportunities that they need. Beyond that, we want to show them how to effectively be community members, business owners, employees, employers, and all the other things that ordinary citizens in society are. Will we be able to do all of it this year? No. Do we have a general 3-year plan? Yes. Have we defined that down to the exacts? No. And I'm pretty sure all of this is not what you were asking me. You just wanted to know who we were. But I don't know how to tell you who we are without getting into all of this.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
So I'm gonna cut it there, because I can go on for hours and get on to several other topics related to it. But there's a paper that I wrote on our website, and it's called "Belonging Through the Vision to Success." And I think that will give you a better understanding of our, vision and mission.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Where are you located?
217 South 4th Street.
And I've walked in a few times. I don't remember the doors being locked, and also if someone wants help from your organization, they can come meet you there, correct?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And everybody that's come through, they know I'm generally there most days 4 a.m. I might make it out Well, nowadays I have to make it out by 4 because I gotta get my wife at 4:45. But over the next few months, we're instituting some new programs and services, and it's gonna take us into the evening. Luckily, we'll have an intern for that. But they know that my phone is on. I try to keep it charged now. And all they have to do is call. Other agencies know now that, circumstance, the guy was up by Aldi's knocking on windows begging for money and got aggressive. Somebody sent me a message, hey, is this one of your guys? You might want to get up there. And the end of the message said, really, I just want to give you a heads up in case it was, but I doubt that this is anybody that's come in contact with you. That's encouraging. So, it's just to shut up, because I'm just going to be going now.
No. Bill, did you want to add something?
May I just jump in? So, Ernell and I have known each other since June of 2020. And I'll never forget, within the first couple of weeks, we sat in my office and sat around, there's a little round table, and we were just starting to talk, and he looked at me and says, I don't trust you. And my response was, well, I hope to soften your opinion of me. And we built a friendship and a lasting friendship on the basis of honesty. And there's a lot of honesty in what he was saying tonight and what he said in many different places I've been, heard, and others have told me. So the honest truth is this, that in this county today, and Ernell was talking about people who left the county, but there are people at scattered sites who are trying to go it alone, having been previously incarcerated. What's the more appropriate phrase?
Returning citizens, directly impacted criminal justice involved.
We're going to have to...
Yeah, we're working on the language.
So there are people who had some contact here, and some that didn't, but they had some life here, many of them. And there are some in DeKalb, there are some in Sycamore, there are some in rural parts of the county who haven't had a support system.
Right.
And this touched home to me because a little bit of, so in 1971, I had had a year of graduate school under me, couldn't afford to stay anymore, starting to work in the trades. And the woman I was dating said, hey, how about a day job where you're not just hiring on as labor, which is what I was doing, for a little while to get this program started. I said, what is it? Well, Elgin State Hospital is turning out chronically mentally ill people who have no support systems, no job, no source of support, no place to live, no clinical services defined for this. And there were people walking the streets with rigid movements, off meds. It was quite a challenge. Police didn't know what to do about it. Churches were trying, didn't know what to do about it. So we started Reality House.
Yes.
It was named by one of the people, one of the first persons who we put together. So I eventually left that and went to work full-time in construction. But so very, very different. But so those are people who were looking for opportunities, rights too, but opportunities as much as anything. And what Ernell has been describing to me for a year and a half now is a possibility for people feeling like they belong here because there are opportunities. We're not saying, nothing here for you, man, you gotta go.
Yeah.
Or as soon as you can put it together, here's some money, or whatever. So what do we do? Now, it's a tougher sell with many people. And nobody knows that more than Ernell. And what he's trying to do is set up this collaborative, which is a good word for it, to bring people together in officialdom and then also the citizens who want to learn more how they might be able to help. Because if the answer in the long term is to be able to bring in people who were here before, gone, paid their debts to society, want to stay out. I'm for it. I'm all for it. And I think most people, I think that's kind of the fair deal. That's what,
Sure.
I think that it's somewhere in our basic grain that we see that's honest and that's fair. Some people have more patience than others. Some people have more passion for it than others, but that's what we're trying to do here. And I think Arnell's going around to a lot of places, and he's the most articulate spokesman that I've met for in our community. And so I invite you to, be aware, be knowledgeable about how this is evolving, and as individuals, as citizens, and maybe as a commission, engage this.
I want us to engage this, and, well, for one thing, my house is on Locust Street, one house off, so you're talking about my neighbors.
I'm right behind you.
You're talking about my neighbors, you're talking about, college, you're talking about Augusta, you're talking about, you're talking about rooming houses in town, that's where I live. These are people I interact with all the time. And as a retired pastor, I mean, I don't know how many times, I talked to people that needed help with this or needed help with that, a good day for me was when I could give somebody money to buy shoes for work. Steel-toed shoes.
Done that.
Or whatever, those kinds of things are essential. So this commission, I mean, I understand that we're not, we're supposed to advise the city council. We can't simply be cheerleaders or advocate for the foundation, although I think individually we certainly can. But I do want to ask you to keep us apprised of policies that are more hurtful than helpful. I mean, we all benefit. I mean, the world benefits. The city certainly benefits when people feel a sense of belonging and can find good, decent jobs and can get on with their lives. I mean, there's no point in persecuting for When I was in seminary, I had a constructive theology teacher who said, "You see all these guys that are out here on the corners playing, selling streetwise and so forth and so on, and hanging out in the doorways and so forth. By the end of the term, you're going to know all those guys' names." That was our job. It was our assignment. I went to lunch with all of them, went to dinner with a lot of them and so forth. I heard the same story many, many, many times. I was a teenager, I was working Burger King, my girlfriend got pregnant. Somebody said, "You want to make a lot of money? I just want you to bring this box, 4 o'clock 40. And then they spend time in prison, and then they come out, and they're on the kid, and it's the background checks, there's the applications, if they're a convicted felon. Either they get hired and then they get fired because of the application, or else they don't get the job to begin with. I don't know how many times they saw that. And that's, that's no help to them, that's no help to the world, that's not help to our kids. So I hope there are ways in the future we can embrace this vision that he speaks so eloquently about.
So Donald Foundation is a tenant in the city building
Yes.
217 and has created life out of that vacant building vacant for a lot of years.
Yes. Now, I don't know whether you passed the law or if you ever had a chance to call Oakcrest.
No.
The reason I'm saying that is because they have furniture, chairs. They're replacing dining room furniture.
That would help.
I
I got it.
Because I think,
That would help.
there was a time, when not-for-profits, organizations in DeKalb County, we're getting new whatever it is. Anybody want these desks? Anybody want, whatever it is. So, if you wanted to give Liz Hoppenworth a call, that might, but I will try to check into that too.
So real quick, I wanted to give you guys all 6 decisions.
Please.
So it made sense because one leads into the next. And I don't want to go through all the slides to do it, so I'll skip these. So the first one is prison and jail is not where you want to spend your future. You have to know that. You can't guess it, you can't suspect it, you gotta know. You gotta just be done. Because if you're not, everything we're gonna do will be for nothing. 2, make the decision to give back to society freely. That's where volunteer service come in. And that's there because when you volunteer, you interact with people. When you interact with people, people understand you, they get to know you. And the things that you do leave an impression.
Yeah.
And our hope is that we leave positive impression. Make the decision that no matter how society views you, you live free and right for you above all else, for yourself. It's not for nobody else. It's not for my mom, my dog, my cat, my daughter. Because if it's for them, that's external motivation. But when it's for you, they benefit from it. So it'll be for them. That no matter what, you won't commit crime. Because guess what? You got to stick to number 1. You don't do number 4, number 1 don't mean anything. Make the decision that you, excuse me, sorry, I'm off getting dry again. I don't know why I'm nervous, I'm usually not. I have enough of that. Make the decision that you'll take it one day at a time. A lot of times you come home, you want to rush into everything you got to do because you feel like you lost so much time. Make the decision that you'll help others achieve stability. And that's where the volunteer kick in a hyper speed, because now you're responsible for another life. Me, right now, responsible for quite a few other lives. But it's not a burden, because all I do is continue to live my life correct, and they see that. And as they see that, more emulated than not. Because inherently they want better. Nobody want to be pairing it up, deucing it up, walking through the child line, let's go to meds, this your rec time. Nobody want to hear it all the time. They got family and friends. So anything that'll help them stay away from that, if they're ready, with just a simple desire not to do it again, it'll work. But it's these 6 decisions that I've made myself and others like me have made, and I've run them by quite a few people that came home and been home for a while, that everybody says, I made those already. They didn't even know what they were, but they made them already. They can tick them off and point to articulable things that they've done to say that they made those decisions. So that's the last thing I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and really, I commend you for the work that you're doing. Thank you all for it. Thank you. Well, we'll have you back, or you come back when you have something for us, or when you, or if there are things you want us to pay attention to that perhaps you would overlook. Okay. 2 things, two last items of business before we. We did welcome Andre. We certainly want to give our best wishes to Josh and thank him for his service to this commission, for listening to us and spending time away from his kids all this time. And it's not on our agenda, but Lisa, you mentioned, you emailed me that Cheryl Appleton has passed away. I didn't know, I don't have her address, I don't know if her family's still in town, but we wanted to recognize that. They are, okay. Do you know what happened? Danny? Yeah, I haven't seen him in years, but I know Danny. I know who Danny is.
Danny and Donald, right, one of them died. You know that, right, don't you?
That's my cousin.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's your cousin?
Yeah, Bruce, my dad's brother.
Okay. Well, can't get no closer than family.
No.
Yeah, so don't look this way, look that way. You can tell
I give you the
another.
numbers, I got the numbers. They're still in the calendar on the dresser.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. Because at the very least, we want to thank you for her service and our condolences to the family. Is there anything else that come before us tonight?
Well, only, in fact, Sir Donald, is this local or is this a national organization? So this is all you? Okay.
I think in 5 years, he's gonna have a big footprint. That'll be the next step for him is to get, you know, I say army, but you're gonna be going layers by layers. But I have something of faith here that in 5, 10 years, I'm gonna Google Ernell Brown. He's gonna be on the cover of a few different things. So I hope the best for him as a friend, as an associate.
Or you had your own magazine.
We might go that route, but I ain't gonna be on it.
Right.
Just because I quit don't mean everybody else did.
Okay. So Josh, where in Iowa?
Coconut,
Is it cold and snowy?
same weather, yeah,
Oh.
nothing spectacular. It's closer to home for both my wife and I. So I actually
You
grew up
are
in
from
Stockton.
Iowa.
Yeah, real close. And I got a brother in Cedar Falls and one in Des Moines, so it's
One
one's
I
good.
not so bad.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's a good professional move, and it's an even better person. So
I told this, Josh, this is true. One of the differences between Iowa and Illinois is you go to the gas station here, right? And you put in your card and it says, do you want a receipt? And you get the answer, yes, no. In Iowa, you put it on your card, it says, do you want a receipt? It says, yes, please, no, thanks.
Oh. So this move was really good for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the package overall is,
Well, no, I mean, from the police to your
Yeah.
current position to your future position.
Yeah, no
It's funny how things play out, so yeah, good.
I appreciate
Your
it.
wife in the Baker, well, your wife is good, or should they be just wrong with family?
Yeah,
So there are probably some grandparents that are like over the
of
top.
course, right.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're pretty good and effective and efficient.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a tough job. But you're here tonight, so, I mean, I think that's something.
And I'm gonna leave.
For not only you all, but other.
Oh, okay.
Just
All right, he's out. Okay, all right.
Better turn, keep talking.
Motion to
Yes,
adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Yeah.
All right. So, thank you very much.
Hey.